Hey, it's A Helmet Collector here. In today's video, we have a really cool uniform we're going to be looking at. I picked this up at the National Road Military Antique Show 2 years ago now, 2023. This is the uniform of Henry Willard Armstrong Jr., and what makes it really interesting is he was actually part of the Manhattan Project. So starting off here, we have his uniform. We have two of his dog tags, Henry Willard Armstrong, as you can see right there. Now, I did have some information that came with this uniform. I also filled in some gaps by doing some research online. So Henry was born on August 2nd, 1918 in Minnesota. And at the time that he enlisted in the military, he was actually living in New York. He had been to college and was working as an insurance clerk at the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. And he would enlist on May 2nd, 1942 at Fort Jay on Governor's Island, New York. His service number was 32330539. And according to his enlistment paperwork, he was 5'11", 155 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, light complexion. Now, interestingly, according to his obituary, he completed some postgraduate studies in physics, and as such, following his enlistment and being in the engineers, as we could see here by his collar disc, he ended up being assigned to the Y-12 facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. In addition to his obituary saying this, he's actually also listed as a member of the Manhattan Project on the Atomic Heritage Foundation list, which I'm also posting up here. So, and of course, on top of that, we also on the sleeve here have the Manhattan Project patch, which is super cool. Now, the Y-12 facility that Henry was working at was the one that was producing uranium-235, which is what was used in the construction of Little Boy, which was the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima near the end of World War II. Now, following the Second World War, despite having that postgraduate work in physics, Henry would actually go back to being an actuary, returning to the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, and eventually, by the time that he finished his career, he was actually the vice president and senior actuary at the Union Labor Life Insurance Company. So, didn't end up going back into physics. Not sure if that was maybe colored by his service on the Atomic Project or what happened there. Maybe just like being an actuary. But he would end up working that job till his retirement, and he would pass away on March 31st, 2004. Now, looking at the uniform itself, a couple things we can note here. He was a technical sergeant per the patch, and his unit received the Meritorious Unit Citation, as noted there. We also see he has a service stripe here for being in the military for 3 years, which tracks with enlistment in 1942 and then going through the end of the war. And of course, we have one of my favorite patches, the ruptured duck, up here on the above the right pocket. So the ruptured duck patch was basically used. There was clothing shortage at the end of World War II. Civilian clothing production really wasn't a thing. Everything was going into the war effort. So because of that, when a lot of these guys were getting out of the service, the only good clothes they had left were their military uniforms. But when you're discharged from the military, you technically can't be wearing a military uniform anymore because, not a good look. You're no longer part of the organization. You shouldn't be wearing that. So because of that, they created the ruptured duck patch that basically said, hey, I'm no longer an active part of the military, but I'm being allowed to wear this uniform until, you can eventually get civilian clothes. So it's a really neat patch. Pretty much everybody coming back from World War II had that on their uniform. Now, we do have two ribbon bars here. The guy that I bought this from noted that he thought this second ribbon bar had been added by another collector at some point. I tend to agree with him because the top ribbon bar here, we have the Good Conduct Medal with the device here saying it was awarded twice. We have the American Theater Service Medal, and then the World War II Victory Medal is the one over here. Zoom in so you can see those a bit better. So that all tracks with somebody that served stateside during World War II, honorable conduct. That all makes sense. The bottom bar here is a little bit weirder because I have no idea what this award is, this red with the black and yellow devices on the side. I tried to find it online. I couldn't. So if anybody knows what that is, please let me know. Next to it, though, the middle bar there is the Europe, Africa, and Middle East Campaign Medal and the American Defense Service Medal. So it would be very weird for somebody that served stateside and, didn't deploy overseas during World War II to have that medal. I tend to agree that, this second bar must have been added later because it doesn't make any sense for him to have been awarded that medal in particular. And, of course, we also know that this is his uniform because in addition to the dog tags, which were in the pocket, we actually do have his name on the inside. Armstrong is right there. Now, there is one other pretty interesting story tied to this uniform that was passed on to me by the seller that I bought this from. So apparently, on Halloween night, 1934, Henry and three of his friends were enjoying Halloween as apparently people just did in the 30s, which is being a public nuisance. Apparently, they'd set up a barricade on one of the roads in St. Paul, Minnesota, and whenever a car would come up to the barricade and stop because the street was blocked, they'd run out behind the car and put boxes behind it so they couldn't just back up and turn around. And when the driver would get out to confront them, they would then pelt them with eggs, which would not fly anymore, but from what I've heard, that's pretty common in the 30s, having these like pranks and just being a nuisance. So Henry and his friends end up getting taken downtown by the police. And when they are at the police station, him and his three friends, John Quast, Stanley Goodall, and Dudley Warner, make a pact that on New Year's Eve, 1999, they're going to get back together at that street corner where they got arrested and, reminisce about the old days, basically. Now, again, these are guys in their mid-teens. It's the early 30s. 1999 feels like way off in the future. But surprisingly, when New Year's Eve 1999 rolled around, all four of them met up back at St. Paul's, even though most of them lived elsewhere in the country. Some of them hadn't seen each other since right after World War II. So some of these guys, they hadn't actually, they kept in touch, but they hadn't actually been together in person in decades. And this kind of became a minor news story for a while. A couple outlets reported on it. If you look it up online under his name or the friends' names, it should come up. But Henry, being an actuary, actually did the math, and he told reporters that the odds of all four of them living to be past 80 to be able to come to this event together was under 1.5%. So very kind of odd scenario. They were actually able to meet back up. They were reminiscing all evening, telling stories. And, they kind of acknowledged this was probably the last time that they were all going to be together as a group. I mean, they're all in their 80s at this point. Henry here passed away just a few years later. But it is just kind of a neat story, and it's a nice human story that's, I guess, lighthearted. Those of you who subscribe to my channel have been watching for a while know that a lot of the stuff I talk about is people dying horribly on the Eastern Front. I mean, the bulk of my content is related to that. So being able to tell kind of like a feel-good story and also show off an item related to a really cool part of military history, American military history in particular with the Manhattan Project, I don't know. It's just fun. It's a little bit different than what we normally do on the channel. So, hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment down below. Love hearing from you. Thank you all for watching. Happy collecting, and I'll see y'all again very soon.